I have all sorts of gadgets of various kinds for measuring angles, from fairly high precision stuff, digital. You've probably seen me use this one when I'm bending sheet metal. But still, there's quite often situations where none of these tools actually do you any good. One situation quite often run into is just something with a very acute angle. Of course, there's no way that any of these protractors are going to fit inside here, fit inside this gap here, and even with, say, this one here with the long arm on it, it's still very awkward to take a measurement and figure out what kind of angle you've got. So of course, one way to create custom angle gauges would be to go ahead and use any of these tools that you've got here. But the way that I like to handle making custom angle gauges like that is to use what's called a sine block. And sine block in combination with a set of gauge blocks gives you a way to accurately create angles, or set up or measure angles. So what I'll do is I'll go through the process that I use for creating little custom angle gauges like this. What I'm going to demonstrate is the creation of an 18-degree angle gauge. So the first thing we have to do, of course, is do our calculation. Since we are dealing with a sine bar, that means that we would do 18 degrees, take the sine, and then multiply that by 5. And that gives us a length of 1.545 inches that we'll need to set the sine bar up on. So we'll go ahead and get this set up. Now, of course, obviously the line, it really wouldn't be possible to draw a line all the way across because this is obviously elevated. So to deal with that particular problem, I'll lay a parallel across. And in addition to that, we don't want quite so much of a gap here. We don't want it to be a perfect point, but we don't want a large gap in this corner. We're going to go ahead and leave it a little straight. And then we'll go ahead, once we're sure everything's down secure and tight, then go ahead and just hold that down. And get our line drawn across. It's a little faded here, but it's still visible from my perspective. And of course, we'll just go ahead and mark that at 18 degrees, and I'll go ahead and trim that out. So we'll go ahead and get this cut out. I did go ahead, and that line was a little more faded than what I expected, but we'll go ahead and I went ahead and redrew that part of the line again, and we'll go ahead and get this cut out. And so that should be our 18 degrees, curled up a little bit here, but we can just straighten that out a little bit. So what I'll do is I'm going to do a quick check against this test section that I made. Of course, one of the advantages of going ahead and making this kind of little gauge like this is, of course, they're easy to modify. Now, of course, this doesn't go all the way to the end, so I'll go ahead and trim a little bit more off my edge there, so that we can fit in the corner, and we'll go ahead and drop that in. And it looks like we're pretty close. If I compare it to the 17, for example, I know that the angle is more than 17 degrees, which may be sort of hard to see from that perspective, but it is a little bit more of a gap there if I use the 17, but if I've got the 18 there, it's a little bit more closed up. So I mean, it's one of those things that's definitely not going to get you accurate to within an arc second. It's good to have a collection of these for those situations where your standard protractors may not be able to fit well. Now what I'll do with these is similar to what I've done here. These are other protractors that I've created over several different projects. A while back I had to measure the angle of something I was bending in my little hydraulic press brake, and of course none of my protractors that I had would fit inside there, which is what initially gave me the idea. But of course they're good to keep around, so after I'm done using these, I'll go ahead and punch some holes in the other corner and just throw them on the little keychain here, so that way I'll have a collection of these. Over time I'll build up a collection of these that I'll have handy for various kinds of measuring tasks. So I hope you found this little idea useful, and if you've got any questions, feel free to ask.